Hi, and welcome to Deep Dive with Jamie Stein, where we take a deep dive look at all things reality TV, pop culture, and the world at large. I'm an intuitive and an empath, which means I pick up on the thoughts, feelings, and energy percolating in other people and the world around me. I believe there is meaning waiting to be found at every turn if you're willing to see it. So join me as we dismantle everything from trash TV to high spiritual concepts and learn more about ourselves, each other, and how we're all connected. All right, everyone. Well, welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive with Jamie Stein. Although I have to say, in some ways, this really doesn't feel like just another episode because we are going into a topic that, for some reason, feels very big to me. We're going to be having a quick and dirty, what I like to call a quick and dirty chat, a kind of on-the-fly phone conversation about one Brittany Cartwright. And yeah, it's just been interesting. It's been interesting for me to notice as I've approached this episode, there's something about Brittany, just even from an archetypal perspective, that feels very big to me. Like her energy feels big. Whatever it is she's embodying in the world of the show feels big. I guess I'm realizing as I move towards this show that she and Jax really do, to me, feel like king and queen of the castle. They feel like the stars of the valley. They feel like the king and queen of the valley. And fittingly enough, they got married in a castle, right? So I'm saying that up top. We'll see how or if this fits into the deeper themes. I'm just aware it's interesting. I haven't even brought my guest out yet. I will in a moment. But what I will just say up top is Brittany, one of the things I find so fascinating about her is how now she's in a new season and a new era where she's finding her voice. But historically, she will present as the easygoing, goes along to get along, aw shucks, Kentucky muffin. And yet there's something quite different that lives underneath the surface. And I think certainly there is a power to her. There is a strength to her. Again, there's a bigness to her energy. And I just feel that. I feel that moving towards her. It's like, this isn't like just doing an episode on Nia, or Jesse and Michelle. Like there's something about Brittany and Jax that feels weighty, it feels heavy, it feels energetically really strong. And I'm just really aware of that up top. So that's my little off-the-cuff intro. Having said that, yes, in the spirit of my quick and dirty chats, I've got my quick and dirty co-pilots, Molly Durand, with me today. Hi, Molly. How are you? All right, let's just dive into it. So I know you're funny because you, again, in the spirit of quick and dirty and flying by the seat of our pants, you had messaged me about having interest in Brittany. And then, I don't know, like for whatever reason, Brittany interests me, but I've never felt compelled to like do a whole episode about her. And then last week, we're recording this, I don't even know what date it is. I think it's like Saturday, May 23rd, 4th or something like that. Last week was the episode where Jasmine and Brittany and Janet got mad at Nia for quote unquote hiding Danny's drinking. This episode finally, like different threads that I've been sensing in Brittany all started to come together a bit more for me. And I started to feel more of the complete bigger picture in her. And suddenly I was interested in her. And it was so funny because around that time, I got another text from you saying, actually, I'm not interested in Brittany anymore. So I guess, and then I was like, well, guess what? I'm interested in Brittany, so we got to do this. So let me just start by checking in with you, either about this recent journey of what's going on or just, where are you at with Brittany in general? And then let's just sort of see where this wants to go. And welcome in whatever it is Brittany's energy is sort of illuminating.
Yeah, I mean, I would say also just right off the top for me, why I'm back and forth with her is the reason she triggered me in Vanderpump. I've had a strong reaction to her since day one. And the things that trigger me about her, I've done. And she's very much like, I think anytime I'm triggered, it's a mirror. But it was also just like, there are things that I really love about her. And there are things that I see about her where it just is, it's actually, in my opinion, it can be quite dark. But that's what, like, darkness is when it's covered up, feels really extra dark for me. So I'm excited to dive in and talk about her, actually, because I think she's also a good archetype for like what women feel like they have to do. Like, it's sort of archaic at this point in the game, but her journey on the show has a lot to do with also the journey of like what you were talking about, being able to speak up and also just being able to authenticate. So I'm interested to see where this goes today.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you then. I mean, is there anything specific that's currently drawing you in the most right now in terms of her?
I, not only in the Valley, but in Vanderpump Rules, the sort of log line when people would describe Brittany would be like, she's the sweetest, nicest person in the world. How could anybody do anything bad to the sweetest, nicest person in the world, right? How could the sweetest, nicest person in the world be with this monster? And that to me has always been like, meh. Like, I don't know if that's true. I think sometimes when people hide their own shadow, they will find partners that will emulate the exact shadow within them that they are sort of denouncing or not able to look at, right? And that's sort of where I think I related to when I've done that in the past. I've like a long time ago, I picked a partner that I was the nicest, sweetest. I had the kindest heart at that time in my life. I was just like the sweetest, nicest girl. And I found this partner that really brought me to my knees of looking at my own self-hatred. And I am not going to sit here and say, I do believe that Brittany has a beautiful soul and heart. I love so much about her. Her laugh in particular reminds me of my own nervous laugh, where it's like you're laughing at things that are so uncomfortable. And the way that she laughs is almost like violently uncomfortable. And so I feel for her. And that's why the second time I was like, oh, no, I don't want to talk about her, because it brings up a lot. Like, it just brings up a lot for me, because she's tolerating so much chaos, denouncing the fact that she loves chaos and doesn't understand why she loves chaos. And then is now so committed to this. I don't want to come on here over and over and say like people are claiming victim, because there are real victims in the world. I've been one. I'm not here to do that, but there does seem to be something that she's committed to of pointing the finger outward. And whenever we do that, or at least I know whenever I do that, it's because of something I can't see within myself and the blind spots within myself. And so I just think when the whole group is like, oh, Brittany's not the problem, it's just him, I think like it's never just one person. I always think of like relationships as like building a universe. Like, you build that universe together. And the parts where she is claiming that she just fell into this, that's what I kind of am interested in talking about. Like how would you just fall into that? And I will say, for me, when I found myself in a relationship that ended up being wildly not great, I did not know it until after the fact. So I also just want to pay like respect to the fact that when we are unconscious, we are unconscious, and you don't see it until you see it. And that's the scary part of living life. And also the illuminating part, right?
Yeah, and maybe because look, this gets into very, in some ways, complex territory, right? Because this is a spiritual podcast. Ultimately, most people listening to this, I think, have a spiritual bent. A huge part of spirituality, of course, is this notion of, how our unconscious and our conscious minds and our psyches, co-create our realities with the universe, if you are someone who subscribes to that. And at the same time, we're also dealing with an abusive relationship, right? Because Jax is doing abusive things, throwing furniture, physically harming Brittany, screaming and yelling at her, berating her, speaking to her hatefully. This is abusive behavior. And I know it can get very tricky, talking about this stuff where or maybe this is just me naming how I hold this out loud. And I guess maybe let's just say trigger warning. I mean, in some ways I'm like, this goes without saying because of the top, Jax and Brittany. To talk about Jax and Brittany, we're going to be talking about an abusive relationship, but let's issue a trigger warning. We're going to be getting into themes to some degree of abuse. And part of the trigger warning too is, Molly and I do have a spiritual bent, and I, like you, I've been on the receiving end of actually very extreme abusive energy, and I, like you, am able to hold space for that experience and understand I didn't deserve it, I wasn't to blame for it, I didn't ask for it, and to then also look at how did I unconsciously co-create this, because that's where the learning is for me. Like, how and why did I end up in this situation, and what choices did I make to lead me there, and what's that reflecting of inside me? And again, it's not from a place of saying in any way that I deserved it, or that you deserved whatever you went through in your difficult relationships, or that Brittany deserves anything that she's been through. It's just we all make unconscious choices. I mean, take abuse out of it, right? We all make unconscious choices, to your point, that aren't always in our best interest. And the problem is they are unconscious. And then, this is the story arc of life. We're like movie characters. We're doing what works for us until it doesn't work anymore. Brittany's finally hit a wall, and I think, to your point, and this is what I want to get into, I do think Brittany has a historical relationship to chaos. And I do think she has a historical relationship to managing chaos. And it feels to me like this relationship with Jax is like the Act 3 high stakes version of a woman trying to manage chaos and hold it all together. And she's reached that breaking point where it ain't working anymore. So I'm saying a lot all at once.
That was really well said. And I actually appreciated the way that you just framed that, because that's exactly what I wanted to preface with, which is we are in no way saying this is anyone's fault. And I love the way that you framed that just now. So that's a great way to start.
Okay. And so that felt clear to you?
Yes, very.
Okay. And so this will be my final trigger warning. What I want to say, if you're listening to this, if you are someone who will likely get triggered by the idea of exploring something like abuse or abusive relationship in a more psychospiritual context, please do yourself a favor and leave now, because we are going to be doing, if that's offensive to you, we are going to be doing that. And I totally respect your viewpoint, but this is what we're doing today. So, and for the rest of you who are into that, welcome, because we're going to drive off the cliff and take the lead. And I just also want to say, like, because I don't want to bypass anything in myself, it does feel a little risky. I don't know if that's like in my head. I don't know if this is just my neurotic fear of like being canceled or something, but I can feel it. It's like, it gets me a little scared. It feels a little risky to have. It's one thing to have a conversation like this in private, where we know we're kind of on the same page and there's a safety in that. But it's another thing to put it out there publicly. And I think, I do think this is where we're arriving at in the world, where conversations are getting more nuanced. And I think a lot of people are hungry for this. But there are also a lot of people who get very triggered by it as well. And so I just want to say it does feel vulnerable. And if I'm being honest, I feel a little scared. It won't stop me, but I feel that.
I feel the same way because I see the pain in Brittany, and I don't want to add to that or make, like, I actually really feel her pain so much. And I do feel like she's a victim of a lot of things. So I feel like that's sort of where, if we can lay that out and understand, hopefully the audience can understand that that's where we're starting from. And we're empathizing and relating, and also seeing like where there's liberation possible, not only for her, but for like 1 in 4 people are in an abusive situation. So, or marriages. So I do think that it's such a taboo topic. I know when I got out of my abusive relationship, the very few people that I told literally immediately forgot that I told them that. And like 2 years later, they're like, oh, you were in an abusive relationship? And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. It's something that we just don't like talking about. So there's lots of good reason for you to be, it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And courageous.
All right. Yeah, no, I'm just taking in what you're saying for a moment.
I don't like talking about it either. I don't like to lead from that because it's not the thing that, like, it changed my life for the better. but I had to be brought to my knees in order to see myself clearly and to see that I had a very destructive unconscious that was out to destroy me. And if I didn't sit with that and deal with that and meet it where it was at, I would continue to invite unconscious partners in or circumstances in. And it's just something that I have to be aware about myself for the rest of my life so that I can learn how to make conscious decisions from my heart and soul, not from my saboteur who gets scared and wants to create chaos. So,
Well, and this is why I get a little bit concerned for Brittany or situations like when I see other situations like this on the show, because I do see her really claiming her voice in a new way. And the times where she, like, last season in the finale, when basically what I really heard her saying is, I'm not keeping your secrets anymore. And I'm not hiding things off camera. Again, I have more to say about that. We'll get there. But basically, she was saying, I'm not hiding your secrets anymore. It was thrilling, I mean, I honestly, and I'm someone who, on a personality level, I mean, anyone who's kind of gone way back in my content knows I was one of the first people out there saying, Brittany is not just little Miss Kentucky Muffin. Like, she knows what she's doing. She knows how to get what she wants. And, so I'm not someone who's always been like a diehard, I just love Brittany. But yeah, I mean, I was totally thrilled and I found it empowering. And like I said, it was thrilling. But what I want for her, yes, I want her to individuate from Jax, and I want her to have her strong, righteous voice, and I want her to use it, and I want her to leave him, and I want her to take care of herself and have really great, strong boundaries. And I want her to learn her lessons, right? Because in terms of what we're talking about, like the ways we make unconscious choices that then get us in these situations that are inviting us into really painful lessons, it's like, that's part of Brittany's trajectory, right? So many of us as a viewing audience were watching her every step of the way being like, what do you mean you're getting your breasts redone because Jax is basically kind of forcing you to stay in the relationship? What do you mean you're forgiving him for sleeping with Faith and like talking shit about you, in the afterglow? Like, what do you mean you're getting back together with him after like you guys finally broke up? It's like, what do you mean you're marrying him? It like there were all these stops along the way, right? Where theoretically she could have made a different choice. She could have walked away. She could have heeded the signs. She could have heeded the red flags. And so that's the point where it's like you want to invite Brittany to look inward and to say, why did I do this? Like, what was it in me that wasn't walking away from something that was ostensibly to others so clearly bad for me? Because if she doesn't understand that in herself, then she's not going to learn the lessons for herself that she needs to learn from this relationship. And to your point, yes, Jax is the bad guy, but if she only keeps this at the level of Jax is the bad guy, Jax is the bad guy, I did everything for him, I gave up everything for him, and never looks at the unconscious or semi-conscious choices she made to quote unquote co-create this, as you said, this universe with him, this world with him, she's gonna miss out on the deeper lessons. And while she may not end up in quite a horrible situation like this again, she will recreate the chaos pattern in some shape, form, or fashion until she does this inner work.
One of the fascinating things about her in regards to what you just said, when she tolerated all those things, I remember at those times her having conversations with everyone else. She's very powerful in being able to get the narrative in a way where she somehow will tell them in a strong way, like, yes, I'm choosing him. And nobody, like, typically when a woman goes back like that, or when there were, typically they're not favored by society. Brittany had a very charming way. She talks about Jax being charming. She is just as charming. She is making her choices in a very powerful, conscious way. That's why it's confusing to me when there's this unconscious level too. And I relate to that as well. Like, I can be, when I want something, I can wield it and present it in a way where everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. And like a salesman can like tell somebody how all this horrible stuff is absolutely working for me, or okay, or I've decided. And I feel like she has that ability. And I think that's what like unconscious people do when they're like recreating like childhood stuff too. Like you're recreating, like making it work because that's what's familiar and that's the bond that you have. But her ability to charm others I would say equal Jax's ability to charm, which I think they both have. His is now sort of even more sad, and it's sort of hard to watch him in those after shows. Like just the state of where he's at is actually quite sad. But she is still, I would say that they match each other on that level. So it is interesting too. In all of those instances, she would like, in a powerful way, talk her way into making people still like her and side with her and be like, okay, yeah, Jax sucks, but you're the better one for taking him back and we support you, over and over and over again.
Yeah, that would be interesting to, just what was her investment in this I mean, obviously there's the obvious answer about fame in the show. And yeah, I don't doubt that's like a huge part of it. But yeah, what is the investment? What has been the investment in her fighting for this so hard?
Her identity, too. Her identity was very much wrapped in this chaos between them, and then her ability to navigate it, people gave her a lot of credit for that, and like that became a big part of who she was and who she is.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's who she is. See, that's what's so interesting to me about her, because you're talking about the charm, and
well, I was always just surprised. I was like, aren't you guys seeing that she's just as chaotic as he is? And they're like, she just had a way of getting everybody to just love her no matter what. And I was like, wow, that's kind of similar to Jax in a way of getting away with things.
Well, that's what I'm saying. To me, it's a survival strategy.
Exactly.
Like, that's really what it feels like, but like an actual survival strategy. And that's what I've always been drawn to with Brittany, actually. Well, not always. I should say in the last few years. What I always am aware of with Brittany is, I think I initially was calling it anxiety, but the more that I've taken it in, it feels, it graduated to fear and then it graduated to terror. I feel such a deep manic restlessness. Even as I'm saying it, I'm starting to feel things. There's such a restlessness in her. And I think that's where there's this huge impulse to control and to manage and to put on a certain face. And, it's interesting. It came up. So part of the reason why this came up for me in this last episode was Jax is sending these rage texts. And look, I want to be clear. Like, I'm speaking now from an ideal scenario. Like, I understand, like, Brittany is just starting to kind of allow herself to be super conscious and vocal about everything that's been going on in their relationship. To your point, so much has been unconscious inside of her. But, I was just sort of taking in Jax sending her these rage texts and how she kept checking the phone and then reacting to the text and getting wound up about the text and showing people the text and then getting like worked up into a rage about the text. And, I was kind of sitting there just thinking to myself, God, like what I really, like what I want for Brittany, what I want to fast forward her to is to understand Jax, I feel like this is stating the obvious, but I just feel like it needs to be said. Jax isn't changing. Like Jax is, I don't mean this in like a mean way. He's deeply disturbed. He's getting diagnosed with like mental disorders and addictions. He's in a rehab facility. Like Jax is troubled. And he's not in his right mind and he's not changing. And so I wanted to like support Brittany to fast forward to the part where she understands, for all intents and purposes right now, she's dealing with a fucking crazy person. And so what I wanted to support her in was kind of like, I mean, look, I don't know the logistics of it and the legal. I know they share a kid and everything, but I was like, he's in fucking rehab. Everything's taken care of for 30 days. Block him, or I don't even know what. Like, stop looking at the text messages. Don't reply. Don't show people. Like, figure it out, like, how you can, whether it's using those apps that they have for people who are, like, mediation. Like, understand you're never getting through to this guy. You're never going to make him see anything like that you want him to see. And you've just got to protect your sovereignty and your energy and, like, essentially, like, walk away from the text. Again, I understand this is new, so this is me. It's an unreasonable expectation in some ways, but that's sort of where I was watching her. The reason I'm saying this is what I was taking in was how hard it was for her to do that. And then she actually ended up acknowledging it, because I think there was finally a point where her friends were like, Brittany, stop looking. And I think she even said, I can't stop looking. And so then I kind of just started feeling into like that, even to me, you said like these partners externalize things in us, right? I was like, oh, well, there's the addict in Brittany. There's the compulsive energy in Brittany. Like she can't walk away from these text messages. She can't walk away from, the chaos, the storm, tending to it, mitigating it. And I could feel the fear of that space, that possible space, the lack of control in it. As I'm talking about it now, it does feel like a voice in Brittany that's like, if I'm not on top of the cyclone will be on top of me. So I think what I get from Brittany is underneath all of this is this feeling like the world is about to collapse. It's on me to keep it together. And part of the way that I keep it together is I pretend everything is okay, but I put this smile on my face. Oh yeah, you guys, everything's great. Like Kentucky Muffin. I'm just the sweet Southern Belle will charm the pants off you. And everything's great with Jax and me. And yeah, he's going and getting help and this, that, and the other. And it's like, that's what I mean when I say this feels like an actual survival strategy. Part of the reason I had difficulty with her early on was because I did feel the performance of the Kentucky Muffin persona, and to me it landed as manipulative. Now I do think there's manipulative aspects to it, but in getting to know her over the years, what I'm starting to understand is it's not manipulation for the sake of just being manipulative. It does in fact feel like a survival strategy to me of like, I got to keep this all together because if I don't, the cyclone's taking over. I have a lot more to say about this, but I feel like I've said a lot. So I'll just sort of pause there and see if anything's coming up for you.
What's coming up for me in regards to, I love what you said about the cyclone. If I'm not on top of the cyclone, then that to me sort of drives home the way that I've envisioned her. Like I do see her and Jax, and like when the cameras are down, I think she talks just as much shit as he does. And I think that's something they bond over. I think she's smart at reading people, actually, and she can sort of cut through everyone else's bullshit, but she can't do the same for herself. I think that finding somebody else who's overtly chaotic and it's like so obvious that they're chaotic is really useful when, and usually, and mentally ill even, like finding somebody whose personality is so big and so always going to be the problem is really useful for somebody who's still working out things inside of themselves that they don't understand. For example, some people, maybe like Brittany, associate love with fighting. I remember when they were in that apartment and she'd found out he cheated and she kept saying, "You're a piece of shit, you're a piece of shit." Like she loved saying that over and over. And it seemed like in her life, she's not really, it's not that she's not in her power, but she's always playing a game of laughing and being nice and she's like being nice and like, and telling other people like how they should be. And sort of, like you said, I do see this control in her of like, this is how it's supposed to be. But this other part of her that gets to yell at him and gets to put him in his place and gets to tell him what he can and cannot have is the part that I think is really juicy for her. And I think like, that is something that if he's not around, like we saw, like he wasn't around in Santa Barbara. So now we're seeing that she's getting mad at Nia because Nia's doing something that she doesn't like because it's something that she does. So Nia's triggering.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like Nia's, in her view, acting fake. Well, I'm sorry. Like Brittany comes off to me, the word fake is tricky, but whatever, a little phony, a little fake. And so I was like, when she see or like everything's okay, everything's nice, but like, or she's either like everything's nice or she's like, he's an asshole, he sucks, it's never like, what have I done, what am I looking at? Whereas Nia, I think, is somebody who's really introspective, takes a look at herself, talks about how her childhood affects her present, that her and Danny are going to go and do. I really respect the way she actually dealt with that, but it really triggered Brittany that like Nia's not having to speak up about this because that's something that she's covering for. Like she had to cover for Jax all these time, but that was a choice that she made, and that's not the case with Nia. That's just not the case. And so she was like, "You need to speak to this. You need to do that," because she's not able to do that for herself. And I think also in several other circumstances, like Brittany has strong opinions about other people, but she also is always, like you said at the top of the show, king and queen. Like she's the queen of the group in a lot of ways. And she knows how to get power. She knows how to get people, like, she knows how to use her language, or she sort of dictates like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Even though it was so sad last season how Jax was calling her a drunk, this, that, and the other, which I actually, usually people who drink a lot find each other and are attracted to each other. I don't think she doesn't have addictive qualities and all of that stuff. I just think all of this is coming from a feeling of self-value and self-worth that's lacking, because I think she's somebody who thinks a lot rather than like, I think she's more of a thinker. She's Aquarian, like maybe can get detached from what she doesn't like, and then she's really good at being able to decipher what's going on around her. And her and Jax had this sort of relationship where they could talk shit about everybody else and be a little bit strategic, and like get into their little like dark side devilish modes in reference to like the group. But then when it would play out, is both of them have powerful personalities, and both of them are charming, and both of them are sort of the leaders of each group, whether it be the men and the women, like you said. But to sort of wrap this up, I think what I'm trying to say is the thing that's underlying for Brittany, and probably Jax too, is this uncomfortability with who they actually are. I feel like she has some self-hatred stuff that is really scary to her. And if she sort of feels like if somebody were to really see me for who I am, they would feel that I'm a fraud and I'm this, that, and the other. So I just have to like keep spinning plates and keep bringing people, or other people in my life has to have chaos. So I can't actually ever sit still. I really like what you said about her being frenetic. I think her sitting still with herself is the most terrifying thing that she could do.
Well, it's so interesting because what you're reminding me of, I remember when Piper and I did a little Jax Taylor dive a while back. There was like this energetic relationship to chaos came through. And then Jax recently confirmed that when he did get out of rehab, or he was diagnosed bipolar, he started talking about like, my childhood was so chaotic. It was so chaotic. And so I'm just suddenly remembering that now, because we're now identifying Brittany's relationship to chaos. And it's interesting too, because I do want to say, not that I think the two of them should be together, of course, at this point, but I've always felt this energetic resonance between the two of them. And there are a couple that I have felt like, if they could actually do their inner work and if they could both get really healthy, they always did in a way feel like a match to me. So it's just interesting that they both have this relationship to chaos. It's like two, he's a chaos agent. Yeah. And then she gets all this juice out of managing chaos. But I guess there's so much that you said. I guess I'll kind of bring in, something that always tugs at me with her. And I'll bring it in to see how it might inform the different threads we're unspooling here. I know very little about Brittany's personal history. I know she's got that mother who shows up, who I think's been married a few different times. I did not watch their spinoff, so I don't know much about Brittany's personal history. But the way that she has always struck me in terms of this survival strategy of being charming and the like sweet, innocent Kentucky muffin. Well, first of all, it's always felt so young to me. Like, she's always felt like almost a little bit like emotional arrested development, like a 5-year-old who's sort of like performing for the adults in the room, and like knows exactly what to say and how to act to elicit that reaction. Oh, Brittany, you're so cute. Like, here's a lollipop. Like, knows that if she smiles a certain way and smiles big so that her like missing front tooth is front and center, and she lisps in a cute way and says something like that's supposed to be what adults say, but in a kid way, like all the adults will laugh and she'll get kind of attention for it. And it'll work, like that's how she's always felt to me. Like the really kind of smart 5-year-old who knows how to get what she wants by being cute in a very specific way. I've like always experienced her that way. But then as I've been like feeling into these deeper levels of what feel like fear and like chaos management, it's always like the impression that I get, what I would want to ask her about if like I were ever working with her, it's just always this feeling like Like, yes, there's chaos happening. Oh God, I'm starting to feel stuff again. There's chaos happening around her. Like the adults are acting fucking crazy. Life feels unstable. And almost like the image I always get is like her tap dancing. It's like she starts tap dancing as this little girl to like get the spotlight on her and to snap the adults out of the chaos and to instead focus on her. And like somehow it creates stability because it calms the chaos. Like suddenly they aren't fighting amongst themselves. They're looking at Brittany and being, ooh, Brittany. Like something about whether it was like overt or covert, her as a little girl or as a young woman being the one who holds it all together, but like not holding it all together in a, because you see this a lot, like the child who has to be the adult too soon, the one who's taking care of like the kids and taking care of mom and taking, it's the opposite, holding it all together by playing the part of this cute little 5-year-old girl who all the adults just kind of want to like tickle under the chin. And so it became a way, well, it became a tool of power, one, but then two, like, to what we're saying, it became a survival strategy. It's like, this is specifically how I manage the chaos. This is how I survive. And if I'm not holding this all together, the entire world falls apart. And it feels that deep to me. And so just to go back to some of your points, because it's true, there have been moments where Brittany, and this is, I always loved it because I was like, oh, the mask is slipping. Here it is. You poke her a certain way, she fucking comes back at you. I'm thinking about like with the pastor, the homophobic pastor, or even when people would challenge Jax, she would flip out. And this, again, this very young, to me, it felt so young, this like entitlement, this sort of bratty entitlement. And again, at the time, I was like, oh, this isn't, like, there it is. Like, she's entitled, she's bratty. But again, as the years have gone on, it's deepened for me where it's like, right, but yes, there is a layer of entitlement and brattiness to it. But again, I don't think it's just about being an entitled brat. I think underneath that is terror. And it's like, I am so invested in this image of perfection and keeping things together. When you poke that image, you are essentially potentially knocking down the entire house of cards, and then the cyclone takes over. And there's a panic here, and there is a rage here. And the last thing I would say about this, just to kind of circle back around to some of the stuff you said, the stuff with Nia, I agree with you. And I think you're saying this, but the one refinement I would want to bring in, just because I've seen people, like when I've been poking around a little bit doing research, I've seen people kind of being like, kind of confused by her rationale for being upset of like, well, I put my life on the, in front of the cameras and you don't. And people being like, well, you chose to do that. For me, what I saw was was basically what you're saying. Like Nia's doing what Brittany's always done, but like the refinement being something about making everything look perfect from the outside. And I think that that's something Brittany has always done. And I think if Brittany had her way, it would have never gotten to this point. I think if she could have managed this chaos and she could have kept things looking a certain way, because remember, they came into the Valley, like this was supposed to be Jax's redemption tour. You know what I mean? Like that was the whole, oh, I'm different now. Years have passed. I'm a husband. I'm a father now. Like it was going to be all different this time. I mean, again, this is the power of the psyche, the power of the shadow. Jax's psyche and Brittany's psyche had other plans for them. Things went to hell in a handbasket in an explosive way. But I think what I get off Brittany towards Nia is kind of like, it's so fucking unfair that you get away with this and I don't, because that's I want to be able to make things look perfect and I don't get to anymore. And I think, this is probably a whole other subtopic. I think Brittany's really now navigating what it means to be in a new identity of someone who's no longer pretending that everything's perfect. The last thing I'll slip in, I'm being very naughty because I don't want to get sidetracked into Nia, but Nia's fascinating to me because I agree with you. She's very emotionally intelligent. And I think there is a level of work she's willing to do that up until this point, Brittany has not been willing to do. And I also want to say, I think she's so good at what she does. Like there's a way where she's clearly still Oh, I mean, we could go into Danny and Nia, but obviously there's something brewing there. And the way that she's navigating this, where she's acknowledging it just enough to where no one can say she's not acknowledging it. But you could tell there's that tension that was still there between them, where like she went into that room being like, okay, we have to acknowledge that he drank too much. And then Danny tried to be like, I wasn't drinking too much. And she was like, Danny, you were drinking too much. She clearly does have her own relationship to even within being upfront and honest about what's going on, there's a certain control that she's exerting, which I find fascinating. I mean, she's her own powerful person. But and by the way, none of this is to say that she warranted what came at her, because she didn't. But my larger point was just, I think very specifically what Brittany was getting triggered by was someone else who has an investment in making things look perfect when Brittany no longer gets to make things look perfect anymore. And I think part of her is like really mourning that. Like, I think it makes her angry.
Well, you think about who is Brittany, like on Vanderpump or on this show, you think of her as like the lovable person that everybody loves, who's always in a pickle. She's just always in a pickle with Jax, but she's always just finding the bright side and making light of it, making a joke of it. And then when Jack does something wrong or when they're split or whatever, she just goes ahead and fucks Jack's friend. And everybody, well, I'd have done the same thing. And it's funny because her friend Michelle, she's really close with Michelle, and Michelle clearly had like some transgressions or whatever, and Jesse's all over the place. But it was funny because Jesse's little shaman guy was like saying the same thing. He's like, yeah, your behavior towards what she did is going to appear worse than what she did, and no one's ever going to talk about what she did, and it's going to make you crazy and act and look crazier. And it's funny because it's similar with Jax in a sense, like he was like, Jax was like pleading on his way out. They're like, she does it too. And I'm like, yeah, she probably does. Like, I guarantee, like, the level of, I mean, they're different types of crazy, right? We're all crazy. But like the Jax and Brittany, like, they do energetically match. It is infuriating that only one is being appeared as the monster and the other is supposed to be appear as perfect. And I think you're nailing it with the Nia thing. Like, perfection is something that she really likes to present. And I think it's easier to present perfection when you're with somebody who's so unperfect. It just makes you feel better. There was this really wonderful woman who's older, and she was like, yeah, I used to always have lower companions so I would feel better about myself. Like, I would pick lower companions because if they were lower than me, then I could feel normal. And I really feel that with Brittany. I mean, for her to like, she could sleep with whoever she wanted. She chose to sleep with somebody who was close to Jax. I don't see her as somebody who would ever really want to leave Jax, personally. I see her as somebody who really enjoys the dynamic that they have. I think it just hit a point where it was unbearable to her, or she felt humiliated. I think humiliation would be the one thing where she doesn't want to look stupid. And I think that her and Jax probably had a lot of unspoken agreements about like the chaos, because they're both drinkers, they're both partiers, they're both like joke around, and they both also have a really good sense about sort of poking fun at the people around them, and they both can psychoanalyze the people around them. But when it comes to them, their bond has a lot to do with what you're saying. I think like Jax's relationship to chaos is that's the norm. Her relationship to chaos is that's what she enjoys. I think that's like her like guilty pleasure is being around it, and then being like, look at me having to deal with this. Can you believe that I deal with all of this? I mean, that's really kind of where it begins and ends for me with her. But my question, I guess, would be to her, or for dropping into her, but like my question would be sort of like, what would it be like for you, Brittany, if you were with somebody who didn't need you to control or manage them, who is an equal to you, or maybe even doing even a little bit like maybe even more emotionally intelligent than you? Like, what would that be like for you? Would that be tolerable, or would that even be attractive?
I mean, it's like no.
Feels like death to me when I'm thinking of her. It feels like death. Like, that would be boring. I mean, I really do feel like she's inviting a lot of this in, not only just, and this sounds really trivial, I hope it doesn't sound cavalier, but entertainment, like to entertain herself. Because a lot of people live this way, and I used to for sure, were like, would create drama out of just sheer lack of fulfillment, or just creating drama because that's what you come from, because you don't want to be in a neutral way of accepting life on life's terms, because life in the world is chaotic, right? So if I can create that, and then I can feel alive. People mistake chaos with feeling alive.
Yeah, and it's like, that's the thing. I just sort of keep going back to her restlessness, and what is the restlessness? The restlessness is, these are feelings, I believe, that have never had an opportunity to really just be directly expressed and then seen and heard by those around her. So, again, the terror that everything's going to fall apart, the rage of being in this situation in the first place. And, it's so interesting to me because, like, I was just suddenly thinking about the relationship to perfectionism and the way that it lives in Nia and the way that it lives in Brittany. And, it is two very different flavors of it. And so maybe, there might be some people who are surprised to think of Brittany as someone who wants everything to look perfect because she doesn't present like a Nia. Like Nia's very pageant background, like looks a certain way, soft spoken, like again, has it all together in a very, like she's like the central casting version of like the movie character who's the perfectionist. Whereas Brittany's whole spiel or shtick is like, yuck, 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 being the down home Kentucky muffin who's just like, down to earth, beer, mama's beer cheese or whatever the F it's called. But that to me, that like, yeah, that's part of it had to be that way, right? Because it's like, that's the place. Yeah, it's like she has to pretend to know less than other people. Like that's the 5-year-old who's tap dancing for the adults. It doesn't work because to your point, right? You said like she's perceptive. And like when you said she's perceptive, again, it reminds me of like the kid who's clocking everything. Like the kid who's on hyper alert, the kid who's learned she's got to be on watch for the danger signs. Like I do think Brittany's really aware of what's going on around her. I think she's very savvy. I think that's how she kind of positioned herself to like, again, get everything that she quote unquote wanted. She wanted Jax. She wanted to be on the show. She got it. And not only, I mean, people talked about this. I mean, I think this was kind of even when I first started talking about her way back on Bitch Sesh. I think someone was asking me, like, how is it when this group is savage to newcomers that somehow they've accepted Brittany? And it's like, that's her greatest trick. Somehow she infiltrated. I mean, we're seeing it with Janet. People can't stand her because the lore is that she was a fan who got on the show. Somehow Brittany got on the show. And not only did she get on the show, but she got on the show writing this narrative that she's just the sweet down home girl. And like, I remember Dodie just being like, I will do anything to protect Brittany. She fostered this sense of like, oh, she's just the innocent little naive Southern girl. So this is just me saying it's like her kind of quiet power lives in being underestimated and lives in being like, I'm just the harmless little Southern girl. But then again, you poke that a little at all, and then, the rage comes flying out.
Case in point, you're just nailing it for me right now. You were talking about when she's a little girl and like bringing all the focus to her with all the other, like if there's chaos going around, like she could like somehow wield the focus to her. So we're literally in Santa Barbara. There's nothing but chaos going on with Jesse and Danielle. All of this chaos is happening. And all of a sudden, now the story has shifted over to, we're in a room, Brittany's in the corner, and her friend Jasmine is saying, how, for all of you who don't want to have Brittany's back in this moment, and Brittany goes, yeah. And she was so revved up, and she's like screaming and almost crying, like, my life, like what's happening with my life? And it was interesting because the focus wasn't really on her prior. And it's almost like that's intolerable too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just sort of, let me just take in what you're saying.
Because she was going through all of this stuff. He's away. The texting was happening. The only like, who is Brittany without Jax or chaos with Jax, right? So like, here we are, we're in Santa Barbara. We're getting to know her a little bit, but mostly we're finding she just has a lot of resentment sort of with her friends that goes unspoken and then spoken because she gets groups together on the side and then they'll all say it. And then all of a sudden Jax isn't there. So then the focus is like, well, he shouldn't, the texting, and then that goes away. And then all of a sudden it's Nia's the problem. But Brittany's sitting there. That's when I felt her pain. I was like, this girl is in so much unconscious pain. I do not believe that she understands herself. I don't think that she's ever taken the time to understand her own emotion. I think for her, it's just like, keep this, like the plate spinning, and doesn't understand her own emotional, and Nia was really hurt by that, actually. And I find Nia to be somewhat genuine when she was just like, yeah, she's like, to your, like what you said, like she's a matriarch of the family and she keeps that whole family together, and there's probably a lot of bullshit, but like she also was very genuine and like, that didn't feel good. I don't like that. And I don't know, like Brittany, I feel like goes straight to anger, like you're saying about this rage. And it's like, it's funny because we're talking about her as a little girl, but it's almost like that little girl never got to actually feel her feelings, and she still hasn't.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. So when I talk about like the threads of emotions that she never got to express directly, yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's like this hyper alert, in a lot of ways, very savvy girl who kind of, it's suddenly what I'm experiencing now. It's like she arrested her own development because, again, I don't think she could have brought any of this directly. It's like the only way her wisdom or her medicine was going to work. And I'm sure a lot of this is cultural too, where she was growing up in the South, and not just like her like physical environment, but like her mother seems to have some very traditional values. So it's kind of like, and there's something I want to kind of come back to with her mother in a moment, but again, I just keep coming back to, I have to, it is this weird dichotomy of, yeah, I'm the adult in the room who has to hold everything together, but in order to wield my medicine, I have to arrest my own development and play dumb and play this role. So these adults don't even know what's happening, but then it's almost like I'm falling for my own magic trick. I don't even know what's happening now. And then of course that's just going to compound the rage. There's the initial rage of whatever's going on around her, the adults not keeping her safe, right, and not prioritizing her, but then the additional layers of rage of what I have to betray and compromise inside of myself in order to be the little girl who's sort of holding this all together for the rest of the world. It's like, that's a lot to carry. I can bring in the wrinkle about the mom, but was there anything you wanted to say?
Well, I don't know if you watched the after show, but it was so fascinating because she was paired with Lala, and the two of them, the way that they were staring at each other, listening to each other, it just like, it was weird. It was like their alliance was against Jack, but other than that, it felt like there was zero connection between the two of them, and almost like not disdain, but sort of like, I didn't trust that either one liked the other that much. But they both were transactionally had the same goal and mission. And that I found that was just my take on it. Mm-hmm. But that was something else where you're sort of like, she is willing to put herself in positions that I don't know that are what's best for her in order to be able to have the power to be able to to control her perception or how she's perceived by the world, and to give her case, and to be able to charm the way she was very charming too. When Lala was talking about, oh, well, I'm triggered by pageant girls, and she's like, oh, well, I was just like a county fair girl, like, to your point, right? She's like, oh, I was just a county fair girl, I wasn't like a real pageant girl. And that's the great cover up of Brittany and Jax, I think, too. But it seems like she's doing a lot of fucking work to do the smoke and mirrors. It reminds me of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, it's like, if she were more like a Nia, it would be it would go against the unassuming persona. You know what I mean? It's like, it's gotta be this sort of unpretentious da-da-da-da-da-da. But yeah, no, I just kind of love what you're bringing in and sort of what we're both saying, which is, it just feels like deep down, yeah, she's a chaos addict. Like, she's got an addiction to chaos. And I think, to both our points, when she's with someone like a Jax, right, there's this payoff where...
or Jax's friend.
Well, and I don't know if this warrants any exploration or not, but for some reason, when you were talking about that, and how Jax's bad behavior gets sort of the spotlight because of his bad behavior that just makes everything worse. And I suddenly flash back. This was one of the few times where I really understood Jax and I was on his side. Was that season where they moved into that apartment where Brittany was painting the wall as horrible blue color and Jax caught her having oral sex with Dodie. And and then of course, Jax being Jax, what does he do? Like, rather than working this out in the context of their relationship and basically, well, I don't even know if Jax cared. I mean, that's the thing. Maybe he wasn't hurt, but basically he brought it out on the show, right? To do the Jax Taylor thing of, see, I'm not the only one. But that was another one where like Brittany was in such a rage. And then of course, like Jax had to kind of pretend that he was lying about it to preserve the image. But I don't know. For some reason, that situation is flashing in my
It's
mind.
very similar. It's like she's hooking up with his friends, and then when he brings it up, he somehow comes off as the crazy one.
Well, and she's cheating. I mean, to your point, maybe who knows? Maybe they do have an agreement. I don't know. But like, yeah, Brittany's sort of doing what Brittany wants, and she's, having relations outside the relationship, and Jax is catching her, and it sort of goes against a narrative.
They both are, right? But yeah. And I think that, look, this is why I think she called him in, is because there's a mirror that he is to her behavior. She's just better at not having it be so overt and playing the game that you're talking about, which is like, I'm just this unassuming character who's these bad things keep happening to, and how could they happen to me? And everyone's like, oh my God, how could you be awful to this sweet, caring person? And she's like, every time that happens, I can feel her like smile inside.
Well, and it's so interesting because, yeah, so what I was going to say, it's like there's an addiction to chaos. And then, yeah, the payoff of being with someone like Jax is it gets to satisfy that itch of, she gets to stay in her restless motion that allows her to avoid all these feelings that feel dangerous. Not to mention, it allows her to feel in a false sense of control and safety of, okay, I'm managing the cyclone. But then also, it's like, yeah, to your point, by quote unquote tolerating someone like Jax, she also then gets like rewarded for it by others. It's like there's currency in like, oh, Brittany, you're a saint for putting up with Jax. Like, you're a saint for like dealing with this. Like, how do you do it? So it's like, not only does she get to scratch the itch, but because there are people, right? I'm sure people like this. I do too. Who thrive off chaos, but it's like, it's so visible. Like for a while, Dodie was like this, right? Like she was a chaos agent. Like
she's a good example of somebody who owns it, talks about it, doesn't pretend not to, though. That's the difference to me, right?
Now, I'm talking early years.
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
It's like, it's time to retire Crazy Kristen, but what I would like to call her is Chaotic Kristen. Like she caused a lot of chaos, And so it's like, you can see it so visible. And that's why people were kind of like rolling their eyes. And it's like, okay, Chaotic Kristen. But, with Brittany, she's managed to engineer it in such a way where, there's an addiction to chaos, but it's not like, oh God, Brittany, like here you go again, causing trouble. It's like, oh, Saint Brittany, poor Brittany, and meanwhile she gets all the internal juice.
I do know some martyrs who continue to stay in these types of relationships. Even they don't necessarily have to be like romantic relationships, but we'll have that. Even a family member, like they'll have that one person in their life that's doing them wrong, and everybody around them buys into like, oh, the poor person has to take care of this. And it's sort of like that martyrdom is sort of ingrained in their value system of who they are, and without it they would perish. And that makes me sad. Like that's why I'm saying, like, that's not because they're a bad person. It's like what you said, that's their survival technique. Like if that's who you think you are, then imagine not having that anymore. How scary that would be too. It's not coming from this like malicious place of holding power and getting everyone to like you. It's coming from a place of like, I don't know who I am without this or how I feel. So I have to be in this dynamic all the time in order to make sense of the world and make sense of my day to day. It feels very day to day. Like today I do this and I manage this and then I manage that person and then I joke about it with my friends later and they get on my side and I can sort of air it out with them. And they could see how crazy this is. And if everyone can just see how crazy all of this is, and I can't get out of it, but they don't want to get out of it because they don't know who they would be outside of it. And that makes me sad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can really, as you're saying it, it's like I can feel like I'm going to say this and it's almost like stating the obvious, but there's like a way with her that it feels so deep, like deeper than what I would mean if I were to say this about anyone. It's like she's built an entire identity around this. Like, this doesn't just feel like, oh, yeah, they built an identity around it. It's like an aspect of their personality and it's just something they need to dismantle. It's like her whole identity / personality has been organized around this. And I think to your point, it's like, truly, who is she if she surrenders this? Especially, again, if I'm right about like what's coming through me, if it truly feels like an issue of survival for her, you know, it's hard for any of us to dismantle what we have come to identify as like parts of our personality when, you know, when we start to kind of understand, oh, this is like a defense strategy and this is the unconscious way it serves me. But, you know, that's hard for anyone, just like an ego deconstruction. But when what's underneath that is like a feeling of like the you know, the world is going to open me up and suck me under and I'm going to get like torn, you know, blown away in the cyclone. It's like, holy shit. You know, and then where I really feel bad for her is like, you know, she did kind of make her way onto this show, right? Which is, I assume, is what she wanted. And I think she was, I don't know how old she was when she got on the show, but, you know, still pretty young, right? And it's like this show itself is a chaos agent. I mean, being on reality TV, being in the cycle of, you know, shooting a reality show and the fame, like that's its own form of chaos. And so it's just, I feel for her. I feel what it's going to take for her to really find something quieter, more centered, and more connected to the truth of who she is underneath all of this. It's a tall, and again, someone who it feels to me like really made an unconscious choice to arrest her own emotional development. You know, because I feel sometimes when I'm taking her in, I said this before, but I really mean it. Like, she still feels like a 5-year-old to me. It's like,
And Jax has that too. Yeah. I mean, that's
yeah,
also
Jax
the
does have
energetic
it.
bond, I think, too, that you're talking about.
And it's also probably part, I mean, you know, you were talking about their charm before. I think it's part of what makes them both charming. Because it's weird to say this, especially with Jax, and I think you'll know what I mean. But aside from his horrible, problematic, and abusive behavior, there's an aspect of him, there's like an innocence to him, you know, like that's the wide-eyed kid who just says shit
Oh, no,
that
like
like
his
no one else is
lying.
gonna say.
Yeah, the way that he lies and covers for himself is like, you wouldn't, it doesn't surpass an 8-year-old's ability to lie. Like, it doesn't, there's no, I don't find him to be, what's the word? Like
Clever.
yeah, like, I don't think it's like advanced. I think it's very infantile, right?
Or even his like the ways he'll be astute. It's kind of like how a kid will, you know, like how a kid can just name things like, and then he just blurts out and he says it and he's right about a lot of it. But there's kind of, you know, and then even the ways in which he's unintentionally funny and like the malapropisms, like, yeah, there's just something very childlike and almost innocent. And I feel the same way about her. But, you know, innocence an interesting word because it's like kind of brings to mind like pure of heart. You know, kids, like with their innocence, kids, you know, to the point that we're exploring, they are smart, they are savvy, they are manipulative. I mean, so are dogs. You know what I mean? It's like you can be kind of the most innocent, loving creature in the world and also still know how to get what you need to get and get your needs met. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm smiling as I say this because with kids and with animals, you know, more often than not, it is endearing because it's so, there is kind of just like an innocence to it, you know? And I feel that in both of them for sure.
Yeah, and I think they both also, because of that infantile sort of stage in which I think that you're so right, they both have that arrested development. I think they also like, they get charged and they like fighting. I really do believe that they like fighting. It's exciting for them. That's almost their version of love. And also, like you were talking last time, we were talking about like how people get love or pay. Like, I feel like Brittany has learned how she gets love and Jax has learned how he gets love. And I think they're convinced themselves that is the way to get love. And I think that's sort of the bind and the trap, that you don't actually have to do anything to get love. That's the whole point of like love, is that it is unconditional. There's no like motive or technique or transaction. You just, And I think both of them have just been in survival mode in social weird dynamics, like everybody, I guess, that finds themselves in these things where they're finding themselves to navigate all these different social norms, or every group or universe, or whether it's a work or a friend group. It's like they always have these, like the beehive, as Adriana said, like they have these rules, like this is good and this is bad, and none of it's necessarily true. It's just what they've all decided and believed to be true. And they have found ways to get love within this dynamic that I think if they could maybe just soften a little bit around their own anger around the other person and go inward, see if there's ways that both of them could grow the self-love and find the unconditional love that they could have for themselves without having to perform. Because I do think both of them are performative. And the way that she laughs, that nervous laughter, is like, I have to make other people happy. I do think she's also has that, and unfortunately a lot of women, we have that where we like have to make everything okay and make everybody feel all that stuff, which I think is women and men. But I do think that, like, what if she were just to like let go of the facade and like drop it, like drop that rock, like drop the whole act for a second and just exhale? I think that would be I would love to meet that Brittany, and I think it's very possible. But it'll depend on if she decides to continue the narrative of like her identity is against Jax and what he's done to her, or her identity will be in the next relationship that she goes into, or the identity could be where she just exhales and actually like sinks into herself and finds some unconditional love. I mean, easier said than done. That's a tall order for anybody, but it's possible.
Well, it's just so interesting because, one of the ways that I work, in terms of the soul journey is I really do believe that we are meant to develop our survival strategies. I believe we're meant, I guess not to go on too much of a digression, I believe we are meant to come in with like a native essence in us. That's like our core essence. I believe it's meant to get shut down in a certain way, like we forget it. And then as a result of that, we develop survival and adaptive strategies and skills that we become very good at. And I think ideally, with our free will, like the name of the game in this human life is at a certain point, we reach the point that Brittany got to of holy, and Jax actually too, this isn't working for me anymore. I've got to go back and do the inner work to find out who I really am. And I really believe what kind of mastery means in this lifetime from a soul perspective is I go back, I reclaim, I remember my core native essence that I shut down. So whatever it is in Brittany that she sort of shut down way back when. And now I weave it in with all these amazing skills and strategies that I've developed. And I become an integrated, balanced person who sort of brings this kind of unique flavor and vibration to the world. And that's where the mastery happens. And I guess I'm just saying all this because it's like, even though like I feel like tremendous compassion and sadness for the way, if we're right about what we're exploring, Brittany has kind of internalized this identity of kind of like, the relationship to chaos and managing everything and the restlessness. I'm also sitting here thinking, okay, well, this is part of what she was meant to do. And just kind of holding like, what does this look like in an integrated form? And I think, again, coming back to like the resonance between Jax and Brittany, I remember part of what Piper and I explored several years ago was the idea that Jax does feel like he's got this native relationship to like, I'm going to say like aggressive energy. Aggression has such a negative connotation these days, but I mean it like kind of like he's this physical embodied guy with all this energy. And we were talking about how he would make a great like warrior in the Queen's army. Like he's a guy who's got all this like energy that if it were moving through his heart and moving for a cause, and if it were directed by someone with more wisdom than him, it could like, it could really be of service. And I'm just suddenly feeling for Brittany, it's just like, because she is a powerful woman and she feels very embodied to me too. And it's like, kind of like, I don't really know what I'm picturing, but just like a force of nature and someone who moves fast, acts fast, and like manifests fast.
Very quickly manifesting. Yeah.
Like she could really like whip people into shape. It's almost like, It's like she obviously does have this relationship to like matriarchal energy, and she really values being like a wife and a mom and sort of like, running the household. And it's almost like I see her as like that. I'm trying to think of someone who's like really embodied this in pop culture, but like just that really tough, strong Southern mother. You know what I mean? Like who whips you into shape, but if it's running through her heart, it's like a vibe. You know what I mean?
I feel like it would have to be messy. Like if she allowed herself to be messy and chaotic, I feel like the chaos in her and the messiness in her and the laughing and making fun of it and calling things out as they are. If she let go of the perfectionism and just let herself be like this ballsy, say what she wants, like call it as she sees it. She does do that sometimes and people love it, but on the cameras, I never know what her friends get and what we get. Like I don't know what her and Jax talk about versus what we see. So that's why I'm not buying it. But if she were to just let down the facade, I feel like she would be, like you're saying, I totally agree with you. Like she would manifest and it could come through her as this messy, chaotic truth teller who says what she sees and claims her own insanity, like claims similar to how Kristen Doute's evolved into this person who like we can trust now because she's just calling it like it is. And she's also owning her own mess.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you went back to it, but I was going to go back to what you were saying about like who knows like what shit she's talking behind the scenes with Jax, and like that really resonated with me. But I was going to say the exact same thing. Like that's the integration for me almost, or it's part of it. It's like that is an aspect of her because, to our points, there is a way that both Jax and Brittany clock things and see things and have opinions about it. And it's almost like if it weren't this sort of disowned division in her where she's pretending to be nice on the outside, but then maybe talking shit, behind the scenes and like getting really upset if anyone ever again pokes the veneer, just kind of owning it of like, yeah, just like the kind of, yeah, like you said, truth teller, sassy, like cut the bullshit, man. This is what I see, says it, like I always love to go back to my personal hero, Judge Judy. It's just like, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you talking about? It's a powerful version of the matriarch. And again, just to be clear, when I say matriarch, I'm not suggesting that she would only be, a wife and mom. Again, Brittany's a manifester and she's clearly a generator. And it sounds like she's generating a lot for her household right now. But it's an overall vibe of like the matriarch. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm going back to what, the beginning of the episode, like Jax and her resonance wise, like they feel like the king and the queen. Like there's just something very like old school, say what you mean what you say, cut through the bullshit. It's not that complicated, kind of very, she's from the South, I guess he's Midwest. I don't know, I just kind of feel that kind of in an integrated place, like that sort of solid, just cut through the noise, very heart-based potential, in both of them.
100%.
I guess the only other thing I'd ask about, I mean, maybe this is self-evident. The one thing that I was kind of like thinking about before all this, I did keep going back to that castle that they got married in and just like how invested in that Brittany was in. And just again, like because again, it's different from Nia, right? Nia is sort of like the sophisticated, really emotionally intelligent, pageant veteran. Whereas Brittany is like the 5-year-old girl who wants to be a princess and wants to get married in a castle. And I don't know, there was something about that was sort of calling.
But like worked at Hooters and is like hooking up on like also has that down home like street.
That is true. But what do you make? I mean, is there anything to be said about this relationship to like fairy tale romance and fantasy? Or is it just part of that like sort of Arrested Development persona?
I think it's exactly what we're talking about. It's about her being the duality that she's living in and playing the facade. It's almost like she wants the fantasy to pluck her out of the chaos that she's afraid of to deal with within herself. And it's like nothing wrong with Hooters. It's not about that. It's just like it's coming from like it's just coming from like she likes to own that, oh no, I'm not a pageant girl, I just won at state fairs, I'm just this unassuming person like you're saying. But also like I live in the big house with the guy who's on TV and we're making good money and I want to appear perfect and I'm going to get married in a castle. It's like she wants those things to absolve her of the other parts of herself that she's disowned. And what we're saying is don't disown anything and the kingdom is at your feet.
Mm-hmm.
because I agree with you. I think her and Jax are energetically extremely similar. And I think everything we're saying about Brittany could apply to him. If he were to just own his own chaos,
Oh, yeah.
own all the things that he's saying, like he's hilarious. Like the stuff he says is hilarious and everyone's laughing at him, and then he'll be like, oh no, I didn't mean it like that. It's like just let it be hilarious.
Because to your point, I forgot to say this, but like when you were talking about like the ways they perform for love, you know, I really found that beautiful because I really found myself for the first time in a long time really just suddenly like feeling for Jax on a deep level in the sense of because to your point, he's so absurd in how he does it. Like his bids for approval and attention are almost like text, but I mean, it's like if it were a movie, you'd be like, this is too on the nose. Like just changing his name to Jax Taylor, lying about knowing Channing Tatum, like all these lies that he tells, right? And it's like, but remember, and so we're just like, oh, you know, it's almost like the more harmless version of the way his destructive behavior like generates a lot of bad attention for him. It's like the lies are so ridiculous and over the top and childlike that he becomes the butt of the joke. But what I suddenly like remembered and realized in hearing you talk is like underneath that though really is this like this kid who wants love and approval, and it's so laid bare that he's telling these ridiculous, I mean, like even saying it just kind of hurts my heart a little bit. It's so transparent. It's just so transparent. And it's like
the call he made to Brittany in the after show, and she picks up and they're laughing at him, and he's like, oh, okay, are you mad at me? And like it's like he has this like I don't see them breaking up for too long, because like she was laughing and loving like how much he needs her and she knows that. And so I think too that what we don't really have time to get into, but I do think that there was like she sort of set these are the rules and he was supposed to play by them, and when he didn't, that's when she got mad, and that's when things got wild. But then he was like, well, you get to do whatever you want, and she's like, well, we don't talk about that, and I'm going to let your secrets out, and yada 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 yada. So I do think that, like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just think energetically they are the same. that's what I'll say.
Yeah. And, you know, just to bring this back right at the beginning, and there is this dimension, obviously, of Jax doing very real abusive things. So,
oh yeah, we didn't even, and the emotional manipulation and just the pain that I see her in, and even just like how she's physically changed and is carrying so much. Like even if most of this conversation we've talked about her calling it in unconsciously, but even if you're calling it in unconsciously, you really truly don't know you're doing that, and the toll that it takes on the mind, body, and soul, I think we're really starting to see in Brittany. And that's why I think my hope and our hope for her is to be able to dismantle all of the facades so that she can really just lay her arms down, exhale, and sort of see that she doesn't have to keep carrying on this show, this circus.
Yeah, because it like reminded me, and, you know, maybe we can kind of use this to pivot to concluding, but like, I'm trying to remember the details, but that whole conflict that kicked off first season of The Valley between Kristen and Jesse and Michelle and Janet, I remember that got kicked off, if I'm remembering correctly, because Brittany actually kind of exposed something Kristen had said. And I was gonna, I feel like I'm always saying this, but it's because it happens a lot. I have all these reels that I plan and then don't do. I was gonna do a reel about whatever was going on for Brittany in that moment. And, you know, it's funny because this was all before so much of this stuff came out, right? This was the beginning of the first season, last season. And I remember what it was, because that's what was happening. Kristen was somehow saying something about Jax or bringing out something Jax had told her. And my feeling as Brittany was like, oh shit, I know Jax is going into this with a plan. Like, we have a plan. Jax really cares about the plan. And the way that it really felt was like, if Jax finds out that like his name is getting thrown into the ring and that this narrative is getting, you know, poked right away, he's going to flip out. And I'm the one who's going to have to pay the price. I've got to manage this. I've got to cover for him. And it really felt to me like she flipped that script so fast on Kristen to protect Jax. Like, that's what I felt back then. So I guess, I'm just saying this because, it's such a minor thing, but to me, it really, again, I'm having feelings as I'm saying this. It just speaks to the level of fear that it feels like she's been living with. And so, maybe it is important that we're saying this because, again, we're speaking to something really deep, which is the unconscious, right? And that's how I work with clients. It's in the unconscious, but it is a different story in the conscious mind. And just because there might be an unconscious investment in Brittany in terms of pattern, in terms of drawing in chaos and managing it, it doesn't mean that on a conscious level, because she is a powerful manifester, she has manifested something genuinely chaotic that has been genuinely destructive. And just that experience of living in fear, having to manage Jax, having to deal with Jax's emotions, and the fact that he, has been getting abusive in his reactions. And, that's not okay, obviously. So it's a very multidimensional thing, but just to bring that in, that like she has been living in an abusive situation, and like you're saying, the toll that that's going to take on her.
Yes, and I think that's why we're seeing her talking so much about, and then he did this, and then he did this, because it's almost like, or at least how it was for me, is like when it was like 6 months after everything happened, and I was like, oh my God, can you believe this happened? I couldn't believe it. Like, I had woken up out of a bad dream, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And it's sort of seeing that, it might be projecting. I do see a little bit of, she's like pleading her case on camera a lot lately. And like, can you see what happened to me? And like, even the whole thing with Nia had nothing to do with Nia. She was just crying in a corner. Like, can you see what's happened to me? Like, can you, like, almost like, I can't believe I've gotten here. How did I get here? Is anyone seeing this? Can somebody help me? It does seem like it's a cry for help this season.
Well, and I also think, too, it's like all the repressed rage of everything she's been holding back. You even sort of heard Paige say that at the finale of Summer House, like, I lied through my teeth for him. And we talked about this in the last episode.
Yes.
But it's like, when you've held back and you've denied your rage for so long, and then suddenly, the genie comes out of the bottle, it's like, holy fuck, let me tell you what the fuck happened. And, look, I think that's such a normal part of the healing process. And I think it's part of what we have to go through to really claim our experience and to have the rage that we never allowed ourselves to have. My hope for her, and what I sometimes see happen, is I just, that she doesn't live there forever. I think first we go through that phase. And then once we, things start to settle down, then it's like, okay, now that that's out of my system and I've let myself express that, let me sort of go back and look, like, how did this how did I get here? How did this happen?
It's got to be humiliating to have it all documented too. So I always I'm always blown away that's part of the element that we're talking about. These two people in a podcast. It's like it's almost like, can it speed up the recovery process? Hopefully, but it does seem like that's a separate element of healing that you'd have to also account for.
Well, and I want to go back to what I said earlier, and it makes even more sense to me now in light of what we talked about in terms of kind of how her identity has been defined. But when I said that thing earlier about her now having to navigate this new phase of life where she's no longer pretending anything's perfect, like, I really felt that in my body of like, oh, this is big for her. And I think, and like, to your point, we're just seeing her, like, Jax has just gone to rehab. They're picking up cameras for season 2. Like, she's just started living more authentically. And I think a big part of the dis-ease we're watching right now is her really navigating, like, this is a whole new ball game of being more authentic, being honest, not pretending everything's perfect, not protecting other people. I think there's like a grieving there. I think there's I just think there's so much there for her. And, and if she does have kind of more of a compulsive personality, which I imagine she does, I'm sure there's going to be a part of her that wants to rush through to the end and to the healing and just, you know what I mean? Like, she's just going to want to go, go, go. And it's like, no, there's a lot to feel here. Like, you've entered act 2 of your movie. Like, you're not in the Shire anymore. Like, she's in a whole new territory. Like, again, her identity has been defined by this, and she's letting that go, whether she likes it or not, All right, Molly. Well, any concluding thoughts?
I would say my wish for Brittany would be to embody the multifaceted, highly energetic, powerful, messy and chaotic energy that's within her, and to own it and to love it and to express it. Maybe even find a creative way to express it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for Brittany to find her big, powerful, manifesting mama. And, rather than kind of
She's halfway there, right?
no, she is. That's the thing. She is halfway there, and that's why my wish for her is that she keeps going, and because I think she's been like a big, powerful, manifesting mama tap dance, like comporting that big energy into a little 5-year-old girl who's tap dancing for the adults,
Yeah.
and I think, like I said, if I go back to kind of my soul strategy, the idea for her is like, okay, she learned how to be that 5-year-old tap dancer really fucking well, and she manifested a lot within that. Now let's go back, reclaim the big, powerful, manifesting mama, and let's integrate the two. Because if we're right about this, I feel like that's in large part what she's here to
Yeah,
do.
I love that. And I do think that the separation between them will help. They'll always be together because of their child, but I think that the only way that they will grow together or it just is to be separate because they're so addicted to the chaos of that relationship. If that does need to be severed first.
So many people need to be separate. This is a total digression, and we should end. But I've been watching Love Hotel, and it's like, I know it's so good, but I'm just sitting there like, is this morally responsible to be setting Shannon Bedore up with anyone? Shannon Bedore should not be in a fucking relationship. Like, this is not why are we setting her up on dates? I don't know, or I thought about I saw this thing on Instagram where I think it was maybe People Magazine did this spread. I don't know what, some sort of eligible bachelors of reality TV, and Schwartz was in there and Carl was in there. I was just like, guys, what are you fucking doing? Do not be putting these people out there to be dating. Don't inflict this on some, poor soul. Get them okay, this is the last thing I'll say. Guys, season 2 of Love Hotel. This is what I think they need to do for season 2 of Love Hotel. This show would be, I love it. I love it. No complaints, no notes. But it would be even better if there were an on-site therapist or intimacy coach or dating expert who worked with them as things were coming up. Imagine if there were a good expert there to deal with Shannon and Earl. You know what I mean? That, and that the women can learn about themselves while they're doing this. Then, oh my God, I'm getting chill. That show, give it an Emmy because that would be so good.
I would say all 4 of the people on there have zero intentions of being in a relationship. Giselle has no intention. Ashley, come on. And then we've got Leanne, who's never, I just don't see Leanne settling down, but I could be wrong.
Well, I love the sheer irony of Giselle talking about how important it is for her to have a man who's in touch with his feelings and emotions. And I'm just like, Giselle, are you looking in the mirror? Do you know who you are?
Virgo, who's not in touch with her emotions.
She did say that later. She did, so I will give her that. But I was like, do you not make the connection that if you yourself are not in touch with your emotions, you probably are not going to be a good fit for someone who, and by the way, Giselle, you are someone who actually kind of makes fun of people for their emotions. You're not, it's just crazy to me. No, well, what's great is it's funny because it's I do love getting to watch them in a different context because it's yeah, on the shows, it's not I love Giselle, I don't love Shannon, but in this context, and it's kind of it also reminds me of oh my God, I've been with these women for 10 plus years and I know them. And I don't know, it's kind of a nice little, I don't know, it's an ode to them, an ode to the shows, an ode to our parasocial relationships. It's
yeah, it's a nice
I have a soft spot. Yeah, no, it's nice. All right, Molly, I love this. I'm always grateful for your input as always.
Yeah, this was a fun
Tell people.
One. I'm surprised by how much I enjoyed this because I was sort of oh, I don't know about Brittany, but I think it was something that I needed to talk about as well. So tell people how to find.
Well, I was going to say, and I do just, I'll put it out there. I owe you because I know you really want to get into Jesse Solomon and Lexi.
God.
So I'm putting it on record. We'll
for Gemini season.
But can I tell you who I want to talk about at some point? I've wanted to do this for so long, but at some point I really want to get deeper into Kyle Cook.
I love Kyle, though. You and I both love Kyle.
I want to get into his workaholism. That's what I'm so fascinated by. Okay. tell people where they can find you.
Well, I just shot a ballet music video for a new song that's coming out. It's called Dying to Live, which is all about death and rebirth and what we're talking about. You can find me on Instagram at Molly Durand, MOLLYDURAND, or at mollydurandmusic.com, or on Spotify. Actually, probably not Spotify, but find me on Apple Music or just wherever you stream music. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. And as always, guys, you can find me on Instagram, Jamie Stein, JAMIESTEIN, where I have content you won't find anywhere else. And yeah, if you are responding to what I briefly outlined about the soul's journey, that is literally what I'm doing with people these days. That is literally what I'm doing in these intensives. It's literally about identifying your soul purpose in this lifetime, the essence that you're here to remember, the survival skills that you're here to weave into your essence, and yeah, who you're meant to be, what lessons you're here to master. So if that speaks to you, click the link on the show notes for this episode, and it'll take you to a brief application. Or you can email me through my website, hollywoodreadings.com, and let me know you're interested. And that's it. More to come soon. As always, I love hearing from you guys. So DM me, message me, let me know your thoughts. And yeah, as always, I will see you on the flip side. Bye.